Tonight's Scoreboard. Do the president and Fed chairman have an economic suicide pact? Raise taxes, impose new regulations, print more money. These guys are sailing America into the rocks. But nothing like an election has set the country back on course. Representative Kevin Brady will score how we can fix the economy once and for all. Al-Qaeda militants reportedly moving back into Afghanistan, and they're plotting new attacks. Did the U.S. embolden the terrorists by telling everybody, hey, we're out of here? Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters will score it. Who's up, who's down, and something's brewing at Starbucks. And it's not coffee. America's Nightly Scoreboard starts right now. Hi, everybody. I'm David Asman. Thank you for joining us. Kicking off tonight, getting the economy moving again. Now, for all the sideshows in this election, there is really just one issue that counts: how to get the economy moving again. On the one hand, we have the rhetoric of a big government president who merely wants to spend more of your money. Now, our economy has been poisoned by too much government. The only thing the president and his allies can think of doing is delivering a bigger dose of the same poison. Now, the New York Times has become about the biggest cheerleader of this more of the same policy. This weekend, they challenged the president to, quote, keep pushing until Congress and the public understand that without more stimulus, the best that can happen will be years of only limping along again. More stimulus. We haven't spent enough. We haven't taxed enough. We haven't regulated enough. Now, our economy is suffocating under the weight of the most intrusive government in our lifetime, and they recommend more government weight. But it gets worse. Not only do the big spenders want to spend more, they want the Federal Reserve Board to print more money to bail them out. And the Fed appears willing to oblige. The supposedly independent Fed is acting like an enabler of our suicidal spending policies by offering to buy more government debt. Now, this would make the money in all of your pocket worth a lot less. But the Fed says that's okay because the economy needs a little more inflation right now. Well, we think that's crazy because the weak dollar is already costing you consumers a lot more at the grocery store as commodity prices soar as the dollar gets weak. And it's not like we need to create a little more cash. There are trillions of dollars already stuck in banks and in corporate money accounts. The reason all this cash isn't being spent is because businesses are afraid to invest with new taxes and regulations looming right over the horizon. The Fed can't change all this. Only the politicians spending our money and writing the laws can change it. Now, call us simplistic, but we don't think that the formula for re-energizing the American economy is rocket science. Scoreboard's been talking to dozens of businesses all over the country over the past few months who agree that what they really need to grow is some assurance that big government will get out of the way and stop increasing their costs of doing business. That means less spending, less regulating, and less taxing. Of course, such simple advice is considered extremist by some. But as we mentioned last week, the public isn't buying this extremist charge. Voters are too close to the folks who are really hurting, the local bankers, the manufacturers, the mom and pop shops, to believe that their concerns are the wild rantings of extremists. They're simply folks who want to get the economy moving again. And unlike the free spending politicians inside the Beltway, they're willing to spend their own hard-earned money to make it happen. Congressman Kevin Brady of Texas is senior House Republican on the Joint Economic Committee. He joins us from Houston, Texas. And David Webb is co-founder of the New York-based Tea Party 365. Gentlemen, great to have you here. So, Congressman Brady, am I being too simplistic or too extremist in my views?
No, absolutely not. In fact, you've hit it right on the head. The Fed and the White House, I think, are disconnected from the kitchen tables and the small businesses along Main Street. There's a crisis of confidence in both the White House, I think, and Congress. You know, consumers are frightened not just about their jobs, but by the dangerous levels of debt. And businesses tell us over and over, as they've told you, that they are hesitant to hire new workers or make those expansion plans because of all the new tax increases, new regulation, expanded government, the job bashing out of the White House. They don't want to be punished. They don't want to be punished for creating new jobs. I think the goal.
It's not because of interest rates either. I mean, the Fed is saying, oh, we have to move interest. Well, the interest rates have come down about 2 full percentage points. If they move it down 1/4 or 0.5% more, that's not going to encourage people to go out and invest more or spend more, right?
I don't think it will. I agree with you. In fact, the Fed has not only done enough, but I think if we have a clear exit strategy for the buildup of all the monetary assets we have, that would actually be more reassuring, I think, to most businesses than actually going on another spending spree.
Yeah, I think you're right. David, you're old enough as I am to remember the charges against Ronald Reagan. Oh, he's a simpleton. What was the one phrase? He was an amiable fool. I heard some sophisticated person tell him. I mean, the fact of the matter is that the formula is not that complex. You just got to get government out of the way, lower the expenses that businesses have for doing business.
You got to lower those cost factors because, as the congressman said, if we're going to spend money to hire people, look, when it costs you $70,000 to hire somebody at $40,000 and you're unsure of the tax structure that you're facing, plus health care costs, you don't know what's going on. Here we
plus
have
all the regulations.
Right. And here we have the IRS a week ago or so that starts telling businesses, go ahead and withdraw some extra because it's better to be on the safe side. What's wrong with this picture? No confidence, no hiring. And look, the New York Times can go out and talk about this all they want. But David Brooks outed Peter Baker on what the president said a year ago. Either the president said that we're not
get too inside baseball. Peter Baker's a New York Times guy.
Right.
But the bottom line here is that there is this attempt to demonize either as simpleton. We even heard, I think we have the clip, we heard from the president refer to the dark side. Let's play that clip and then get your reaction, Congressman.
They're fighting back. The empire is striking back. To win this election, they are plowing tens of millions of dollars in the front groups.
The empire's striking back, Congressman. So you're part of the dark side. I mean, you're evil, just plain evil. That's the rhetoric.
Yeah, I hope my mom's not watching tonight. This is a case of the incredibly shrinking president. I think he's coming off as more desperate than ever in these waning weeks. And the truth is, public's very well informed about Obamacare, about financial reform bill, about all the new taxes that will hit them at the end of this year. They're making a decision based on an informed choice. I don't think they're going to pay attention to the president.
What about, David, the extremist charge? I mean, you're affiliated with a Tea Party organization. Right. You meet a lot of Tea Party people. Does this just rub off their back, all this talk of extremism, or does it hurt?
You know what? First, they get angry. They go through the stages. They're angry at being called, being demonized. Me, the redneck racist, imagine that. But it doesn't work. And in a way, the more the president, the more the left throws it out there.
By the way. I am a redneck. But we'll let that pass. Go ahead.
But, the more they do that, they're attacking honest, everyday Americans. So they're actually ginning up more support. 70% of Americans agree with the principles. 70% aren't in the Tea Parties. What does that tell you? Mr. President, maybe you ought to pay attention.
Do you think that the administration, I know that they've got a different mentality, Congressman, inside the Beltway, but they must be getting some feedback as you're meeting with your constituents now. The people that are using this extremist charge are meeting with their constituents as well. Don't they get feedback saying that this rhetoric's not working?
I think they are. I think that's why more and more Democrat incumbents are running away from their own president and their own party. And again, the American public is frightened by these deficits. They don't believe tax increases, more regulation creates jobs. And they may not be as loud, perhaps, in town halls as they were a year ago, but that's changed to just resolve. They are resolved to change this government.
That's a great way of putting it. All right, stay with us if you can, Congressman. And David, tonight's panel includes political analyst Angela McGlowan, who was on the campaign trail herself not long ago, Lindsay Piegza of FTN Financial, and Lee Hawkins of the Wall Street Journal. Angela, I want to start with you because you were out in the campaign trail. It was the early days of the Tea Party.
Yes.
How do you think that has fermented over the past year and a half to or against the administration's favor?
It has gone against the administration's favor. And how has it fermented? We have gotten stronger and stronger, David, and we're going to be the reason why.
So it's kick-a-boy joy juice right by now.
Exactly,
That's pretty strong
exactly.
stuff.
And how do we make this economy better? I propose getting rid of the Department of Commerce, getting rid of the Department of Energy, getting rid of the Department of Education.
Well, you're an
Certain
extremist.
things, totally. But those things, yes, I am. But sometimes we have to go to the extreme.
Hold on, though. Let me go to Lee on this,
Yes.
because I was called, Doug Schoen is going to be on a little later in the program, once said it was an extremist view to be against the Department of Education. Now, the Department of Education was set up to improve children's educational standards. Since it was developed, educational standards have come down, so it hasn't worked. Department of Energy was created to get us off of foreign oil. At the time it was created, about 30 years ago, we were much less dependent on foreign oil than we are now. So why not get rid of institutions that have failed?
Well, because maybe we can fix those institutions and look at the policies that we developed that actually made the flaws
Do you really
come about.
believe that we can? I don't.
Well, certainly, I do have faith in government still. I still believe that we can do that. Now, lessening regulations and looking at
Let me
policies.
just stop you though, David. I don't want to keep interrupting, but what gives you faith? I grew up in D.C., so I've always been a little cynical about what government can do. But what gives you faith that they can do it right when you look at what a mess, say, Medicare is?
Well, a lot of the problem is the lack of collaboration and no cooperation on either side of the political aisle. And I think if we saw more of that, maybe we would see things move ahead.
Is that what we need, Lindsay?
I think one of the problems is that as we enter into these policies that fail, the argument is always, well, we need more. Stimulus didn't work. Well, we need more. Quantitative easing didn't work. Let's do another round of it. So the problem is not coming up with the proper solution and realizing that once these programs come in play, we have to judge them on merit rather than just throwing more at the wall to see what sticks.
And you know, Congressman, even if some people out there are extremists, maybe you think I'm extremist for wanting to get rid of Department of Ed or the Department of Energy or Department of Commerce. I get rid of them before anybody. But what happens is today's extremist is tomorrow's centrist. That is, I heard the same charge about Ronald Reagan in the late 1970s. Oh, he's an extremist. We'd rather go with somebody like Jerry Ford. He's mainstream. But a couple of years after Reagan was in power, 3 or 4 years after, he was as mainstream as you come. He had a lot of Democrats voting for him.
Well, that's the case. And I think today voters want truth tellers who will absolutely tell them the truth of where we stand in the budget, on the entitlements, on Social Security and Medicare. Truth is, we're spending 40% more than we're bringing in, and that's not going to change anytime soon if we stay on this course. So we're going to have to shrink this government in a meaningful way and get us back to a balanced budget. I still think that's one of the reasons consumers are not returning to the stores. They know this isn't healthy for us.
You know, this goes to the point of restructuring the institution that I wrote about in my article. That one of the problems is you create something in Washington and both sides decide, how can we lobby and use it best to our advantage? That's what happens with the bureaucratic morass in Washington, and that's what happens from the lobby side and the special interests. So we have got to take the bitter pill and look, even if you don't get rid of Department of Commerce or Education, cut it significantly, and then push it down. If this can be affected at the state level, do it at the state level. The further you push it up, the more laws, the more legislation, the more problems, and you end up studying something for 15 years to find out, hey, we can't do it.
And we can look at the Clinton administration. We can even look at the Bush administration. You had no child left behind, but in the inner city and in the rural part of Mississippi, children have been left behind, David.
Sure
you have kids in the 2nd District of Mississippi.
Sure they have.
In the 9th grade, they read on the 3rd grade
And while the
level.
bureaucrats in D.C. are making out like hay, you have the lowest unemployment rate in the nation is in Washington, D.C. The kids in rural Mississippi are doing badly. I mean, that's just, there's something very wrong morally
And
about
it's the
that.
unnecessary regulation that has kind of created this crisis in confidence that's keeping people from getting back into the market as aggressively as they would have. Because if you don't know what's coming, you're not going to hire employees. If you're an entrepreneur or a small business, you're not going to pump money back into the economy.
But the biggest fear is not necessarily uncertainty, but that, in fact, taxes will go up and regulations will go up and costs will go up.
Part of it is the tax issue, yes, but part of it is cost, and we're already seeing that. We see commodity prices measured by the PPI up 4% versus the CPI, which is the consumer price, is 1%. So already what we see is
the lower the dollar goes in value, the more they print these dollars, the Federal Reserve, the less my money is worth and the more it's going to cost me to shop. All right.